Besides, assuming that you've fallen for logical tricks like the rest of us, this chapter will come in handy as a defensive tool. An ability to detect a fallacy helps you protect yourself against politicians, salespeople, diet books, doctors, and your own children. All you have to do is look for a bad proof, the wrong number of choices, or a disconnect between the proof and the conclusion. Bad proofs include 3 sins. Hey there, it's Tiger Todd with Hero School. Glad to be back with you. Reading a couple dozen of pretty influential books to both myself professionally, personally, to Hero School, and today's book is no exception. This book by Heinrich is called Thank You for Arguing. Now, few people understand Philosophy 102 and beyond. Rhetorical questions, disjunctive syllogisms, as well as Heinrich's. However, Jay also hates his children. Okay, I take that back. Heinrich has no trouble making fun of his own children to prove some of the ways adults argue as ridiculous. So he gives us strategies for these. Anyway, clever book, introduced to me by one of my psychology mentors. Kick in the pants book. I'm going to open the section on, are you ready? The section here is on defense, and under defense, the first chapter, spot fallacies. Does that mean the verb spot fallacies, or are there types of fallacies called spot fallacies? We'll soon find out. Let's get the Ben Franklin's on. The 7 deadly logical sins. Ways to use logic as a shield. This quote by John Milton: "Whoever knew truth put to the worse in a free and open encounter." And then this one is from The Simpsons. Homer says, "Lisa, would you like a donut?" Lisa says, "No thanks. Do you have any fruit?" Homer says, "This has purple in it. Purple is a fruit." Not all fallacies are hard to spot. Homer's is obvious. He mistakes a fruity color with the thing itself. It's the same fallacy as this one. Elephants are animals. You're an animal. That makes you an elephant. Actually, this is just stupid, and no one would fall for it. The most insidious fallacies, on the other hand, seem valid until you take them apart. There are dozens of logical fallacies. I collected the ones most common to daily life and organized them around 7 logical sins. But while the sins will help you understand what we're talking about, you don't have to remember them, let alone the fallacy's formal names, unless you want to impress and annoy your friends. All logical fallacies come down to, bad logic. In the logic of deliberative argument, you have the proof and a choice. We saw it in the last chapter how deductive logic works. It starts with what the audience knows or believes, the commonplace, and applies it to a particular situation to prove your conclusion. In deduction, the commonplace serves as your proof, the proof in induction in a set of examples. Now, this book, the way it's laid out, has, as you can see here, can you see? Yeah, there we go. You can see some quotes, you can see the context, and then it gives us a couple little persuasion alerts. So I'll be reading those as we turn each page, okay? So in this case, persuasion alert says, I committed a fallacy with, quote, all logical fallacies come down to bad logic. As you'll see, that constitutes a tautology, repeating the same thing as if I'm proving something. Politicians love this trick. So, to see whether a fallacy lies hidden in an argument, ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, does the proof hold up? Number 2, am I given the right number of choices? And number 3, does the proof lead to the conclusions? I suppose I should add a 4th. Who cares? Honestly, there's no need to care, provided you never fall for the fallacies yourself. In fact, one big difference between formal logic and the art of persuasion is their attitudes toward the rules. Logical fallacies are verboten in logic, period. Commit one, and logic sounds the gong, and you're booted off the stage. Never mind that there's no stage for formal logic, which exists only in theory. In rhetoric, on the other hand, there really are no rules. You can commit fallacies to your heart's content as long as you get away with them. Your audience bears the responsibility to spot them, but if it does, there goes your ethos. Your audience will consider you either a crook or a fool. So, before you commit a fallacy, you will want to know your fallacies. Besides, assuming that you've fallen for logical tricks like the rest of us, this chapter will come in handy as a defensive tool. An ability to detect a fallacy helps you protect yourself against politicians, salespeople, diet books, doctors, and your own children. All you have to do is look for a bad proof, the wrong number of choices, or a disconnect between the proof and the conclusion. Bad proofs include 3 sins: false comparison, which is lumping examples into the wrong categories, or bad example, and ignorance as proof, which is asserting that the lack of examples proves something. Wrong number of choices covers one essential sin, the false choice, offering just 2 choices when more are actually available, or merging 2 or 3 issues into one. Disconnect between proof and conclusion results in the tautology, in which the proof and the conclusion are identical. The red herring, a sneaky distraction, or the wrong ending, in which the proof fails to lead to the conclusion. I'll throw some fallacies in along the way, if only to show you I know what I'm talking about. The 7 sins show the beautiful variety of ways that people cheat, lie, and steal. Just keep in mind that they all boil down to bad proofs, wrong number of choices, or a disconnect between the proof and the conclusion. The first deadly sin, the false comparison. Plums and grapes are purple, but they don't make purple a fruit. You need not be an Aristotle to figure that one out. But how many consumers have fallen into that same kind of fallacy? Made with all natural ingredients, you've seen it. It may not seem like it, but the all-natural pitch commits the purple is a fruit error. Because an ingredient belongs to the same group as things that are good for you, i.e. natural substances or purple fruit, the ingredient also must be good for you. But botulism is natural too, and not at all good for you. Not to mention the sneaky syntax that implies a hyphen between all and natural. Add a gram of grape pulp and a gram of wheat gram to a donut's chemical blend, and voila, all natural ingredients. 2 all natural ingredients to be exact. You can spot the all natural fallacy by breaking it in half. This donut has purple, and purple is a fruit, so you should eat this donut. I am going to use that on my wife tomorrow. Purple's fruitiness constitutes the reason. But purple isn't a fruit, which means the proof doesn't hold up, and the argument is spoiled. If I said this donut has a grape jelly filling, grapes are fruit, so the donut is a fruit, the proof, grape jelly, grapes, would have to be legit, but the argument would still be a fallacy. The proof, even a correct one, has to lead to the conclusion. Just because the donut has fruit doesn't make the donut fruit. It's a false comparison. Now we're going to read the margins here. You ready? What makes this a sin, i.e. the false comparison? The examples don't hold up. Why? Because they were slotted into the wrong category. Imagine those Venn circles in the previous chapter. Purple is a big circle, fruit is another big circle. Grapes fall in the overlap, but purple still won't fit entirely within the fruit circle. All the fallacies I listed under this sin have the same wrong circle problem. Meanings. One category of fallacy that I don't deal with is ambiguity, logic's version of eats, shoots, and leaves. The hyphen in all natural ingredients commits this fallacy. And then finally, the common fallacy. The all-natural fallacy, it assumes that members of the same family share all the same traits. Small children seem to have a passion for proofs, judging by their love of why. Parent, don't go into the living room. The kid, why? Parent says, because the dog was sick. Kid says, why? Parent says, because your father fed it hot dogs from the table. Kid says, why? Go ask him. That may explain their love of fallacious reasoning. Kid, Why wouldn't you drive me to school? All the other parents drive their kids to school. Other parents drive their children, therefore you should drive me. The kid falsely compares her parents with all others. What makes it false? For one thing, not all parents are chauffeurs. Surely some make their kids take the bus. For another, her parents happen not to be the parents of the kid's schoolmates. What is good for those others may not be good for her. So how does one respond? First, you might raise the child's self-esteem. Parent: that was an Aristotelian enthymeme, dear. Now squash her. But I see Wen Ho at the bus stop every morning. And even if all the other parents drove their kids, your proof doesn't support your choice. The kid may not understand a word you say, but she will eventually, and when she does, look out. You may never win another argument. Meantime, if you feel especially obnoxious, name the fallacy, the appeal to popularity, which legitimizes your choice by claiming that others have chosen it. My children would rather suffer an old-fashioned caning than hear me label their fallacies. Was it Kierkegaard? When you label me, you negate me? I suppose that works for fallacies too. If you simply used a parental cliche instead of logic, you yourself would be guilty of a similar fallacy. Parent: what if all the other children's parents told them to jump off a cliff? Would you follow? John Locke, the philosopher and rhetoric professor, who described many logical fallacies in the early 1700s, would call this shot a foul. The collective parents of an entire school are extremely unlikely to propose mass suicide, which makes your fallacy a reductio ad absurdum, reducing an argument to absurdity. You falsely compared being driven to school with jumping off a cliff. The proof crumbles and the conclusion collapses. Logic can do more than save you from driving your kid to school. It can also save your life. Here the driver would say, I don't have to slow down. I haven't had an accident yet. Since there are no examples here, just one adrenaline-challenged driver, you know to look for a reason. He thinks he can speed safely because he has a good driving record. Does his proof lead to his conclusion? Does the man's perfect record keep you safe? It may increase the likelihood of an accident-free trip, but weigh that against the guy's lead foot, and personally, I would take the bus. His claim is a form of false comparison because what he did in the past is perfect. What he does in the future must be perfect too. The official name for this logical error is fallacy of antecedent, but you probably won't have the presence of mind to trot it out 80 miles an hour. Instead, try conceding. Now let's read the margins. College administrators like to say each school is unique, but then they do all they can to imitate one another. In the 80s, Ivy League schools began favoring candidates interested in one thing rather than the well-rounded students of tradition, and the fad spread. An alumnus who objects to the policy could ask officials what other schools use that policy, and if the administrator offers his list with a smug tone, retort, when my kid said, everyone else does it, I'd tell them, don't want to rise above the crowd? Other margins. Common fallacy, the appeal to popularity. Because all the other kids get to, I should too. This premise fails to prove the conclusion. Persuasion alert. What about persuasion by character? Isn't any appeal to ethos an appeal to popularity? Indeed it is. This is one of the logical fallacies allowed in rhetoric, as you'll see in the next chapter. Common fallacy, reductio ad absurdum. Reducing an argument to absurdity, the premise is unbelievable. And then finally, the common fallacy here is the fallacy of the antecedent. It never happened before, so it never will. Or it happened once, so it will happen again. Another reply to the antecedent fallacy then could be, that's a long time to tease fate, or for a certain audience, your karma must be terrible. All right, should we go one more page? Let's find it. You. I'm sure you're a great driver, but going this fast scares me, so it's irrational. Humor me. Or, if you don't mind risking road rage on top of unsafe driving, give a snappy answer. The proper rhetorical reply. No one is DOA a second time. Another sham comparison, the false analogy, bollockses up government across this great land of ours. Candidate. I'm a successful businessman, elect me mayor, and I'll run a successful city. So the guy made a lot of money in business. The problem is that City Hall is not a business. Many entrepreneurs have successful political careers, but at least as many do not. Entrepreneurs have learned the hard way that in public service, political skills count more than business skills. The proper rhetorical reply: I'll vote for you if you give me dividends and let me sell off my shares of the city. False comparisons also cause very bad math. You: our profits rose by 20% this fiscal year. His pal asks, well, what was your margin at the beginning of the year? You: 12% before taxes. Wow, so your profit's 32%. The proof is that your profits started at 12% and grew by 20%. So what's the problem? 12 plus 20 equals 32, right? Well, the problem is called a unit fallacy, mistaking one kind of unit for another. People commit this error all the time in business. To avoid it, try to keep track of the difference between a piece of the pie and the whole pie. Again, now let's read the margins. What's wrong with this argument? My dog doesn't bite. That's a classic fallacy of antecedent. The common fallacy here, the false analogy: I can do this well, so I can do that unrelated thing as well. And finally, what's wrong with this argument? When told I cut my own trees for firewood, a New Yorker gasped, "How can you make yourself do it? Someone told me they shriek when they fall." Well, they do sometimes, but sounding human doesn't make them human. She committed a type of false analogy called anthropomorphism. You see this fallacy in reverse when people refer to sex offenders as predators and other criminals as animals. It is a false analogy because they act inhumanely. They must be another species. So let's backtrack to finish the unit fallacy. The proof is that your profit started at 12% and grew by 20%. So what's the problem? Well, 12 plus 20 equals 32, right? Well, we know better. The problem is called a unit fallacy, mistaking one kind of unit for another. People commit this error all the time in business. To avoid it, try to keep track of the difference between a piece of the pie and the whole pie. I give you a piece that amounts to 1/8 of a pie. Not big enough, you say. So I give you an additional tiny sliver that measures just 1/5 the size of the first piece I gave you. I'm not giving you 1/5 of the pie, am I? A percentage of a piece of the pie, a percentage of a percentage, 20% of 12% profit is not a fraction of the whole. If this still confuses you, just stick to this rule. Never add up percentages with a calculator. Proper rhetorical reply: well, that 20% was on top of the 100% of our profit, so we actually made 120%. A simpler version of the unit fallacy helps pad the profits on consumer goods. This laundry detergent sells for less than the laundry detergent in the same size box, which mysteriously weighs less. The unit cost and the amount you pay per ounce of detergent is actually more on the cheaper box. The manufacturer hopes you don't notice and that you fail to pay attention to the unit prices on the store shelves. My wife figured she was onto that trick. One day she asked me to lug a huge box of detergent out to the car trunk. The box was so large you had to decant some of the stuff into a smaller container so you could lift it up to the washing machine. Me: why did you buy this? His wife: it's the super economy size. It's cheaper. Me: then what? His wife: then the smaller sizes. If you did more of the shopping, you'd know these things. That stung. I found a receipt from the previous month with a smaller box of detergent on it. I went to the basement and read the box to see how much it held. And then I found a calculator which produced a very satisfying result. Me: well, unless prices jumped dramatically this month, the super economy size costs 7% more per ounce than the regular size. His wife: yes, but it's a larger box, so it works out to be less expensive. Me: no, dear, a larger box doesn't make something cheaper. You would have to save money by buying a smaller box. And his wife: oh. Me: so do you think maybe you're sorry for saying I don't know these things? Big mistake. His wife: yes, I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. It's clear that I don't have the math skills to do the shopping. From now on, you'd better. Oh. All right, that is the chapter from this incredible book by J. Heinrich's Too Much Fun. But What a great way to learn rhetoric, and better still, to learn defense to so many of the false arguments that we hear now through the news, Twitter, Facebook, etc. People trying to sell something that they already believe in. And anyway, the people use them all the time. We've used them. And again, a great way to say, I'm sorry, but be careful or you'll end up doing the shopping. So I hope you enjoyed that read. We'll get back to another book tomorrow. This is Tiger Todd with Hero School saying, we believe in heroes and we believe in you.